Bully my dad when he was your student? Bully my bro now? I'm about to ruin your entire life. Greater than the town where this happened is a small one, and the school that I went to is a 70-year-old school. My granddad and my dad are also alumni of this school. Let me just start off by saying this, that the alumni of this school are really successful, and the school has had a long history of being very charitable and also offer amazing retirement benefits to teachers depending on how long they've worked here. My great-granddad donated some of his property to the school when it was being constructed, and he was an advisor and a part of the school board in his time. The school was an all-boys school up to 1996, when they had their first co-ed class, and is a full co-ed now. The school also has all classes, from kindergarten to high school, split in 2 buildings. The first one houses kindergarten to 5th grade, and the other has the classrooms for 6th grade to 12th grade. Part 1, Teacher versus Dad. The incident said teacher, we're gonna call her MD, was my dad's math teacher when he started high school. She was a young woman just finishing her teaching degree, and was a master's in math and chemistry. At that point, she was the most qualified teacher the school had. Unfortunately, MD was also a nasty person. She walked into the class and the students were expected to be sitting in ready mode, back straight, legs together, and hands on the laps, with only the needed textbook and a pencil to take notes on the margins. The class was expected to greet her with a good morning/afternoon when she walked in, and she assigned tons of weekend homework. She would simply stop teaching for the entire hour-long class if one person spoke without having asked to speak. You couldn't drink water without her permission, couldn't go to the restroom unless she finally saw your raised hand and asked you to speak. There were multiple cases of people complaining against that, but with her being the most qualified teacher there, the school board didn't take action. Instead, they supported her by saying that this would help discipline the students. But this is not even the beginning of it. Her exams were incredibly hard, and with the classes being full of teenage boys, they would talk, and even one of them doing so would cause her to stop teaching, and not teach until the next class. She would then lecture on a different topic, completely skipping that part of chemistry. Suffice to say, before the finals, the entire class was in a panic state, trying to self-study enough to at least pass the class. My dad ended up getting 41%. Our education system said you failed the class if you had under 40%, so he was relieved that he passed. But when he went through his answer sheet, my dad noticed that his totaling was incorrect, and that he in fact had a 49 on that test. He raised his hand, and after about 5 minutes or so of him just sitting in his seat, calmly, with his hand raised, he was called on and MD asked what the problem was. Dad told her that there was a totaling mistake in the final, and that he actually had a 49. This somehow offended her. Instead of calling him forth and checking his paper, MD decided that it was simply impossible for her, a master's in math, to make a mistake in something as simple as addition. She waved him off, and my dad was shocked, but she just calmly turned to the next person with a question. My dad, on the other hand, was not happy. He walked up from his seat, which was basically considered a crime in her class, and put the paper on MD's desk, and started totaling his points loudly. MD incredulously watched him do that, and was at a loss for words, though when he was done totaling, you could see her face was flushed and she was furious. She looked furiously from the paper to my dad, and then back to the paper, and suddenly, a cruel smile appeared on her face. MD, oh okay, I see the mistake. But that is no excuse for this behavior. This awards a subtraction of 10 points from your final. The class that was amazed at the first sentence went back to having grim looks. And my dad stood there, jaw dropped, that he now had 39 points, and had failed this class. Instead of responding and making this situation worse, he simply took his final, packed his backpack and left the classroom. He went and spoke to his granddad, who was on the school board, but he said he couldn't do anything since grades were completely in the hands of the teacher concerned. My dad took his loss, and decided that revenge was not worth the trouble, and switched classes. He dropped chem and took up econ, and that was the last interaction he ever had with this teacher. Part 2, Teacher versus my brother and I. My younger brother B is 2 years younger to me, and so, when I was in freshman year, starting high school, my younger brother was in 7th grade. We had an auditorium under construction, and the library was newly renovated, so a teacher was assigned to chaperone the younger class students at the library. My younger brother's class, unfortunately, had MD as their chaperone. My dad had specifically instructed me to be very careful around MD, and I was on the lookout, but my younger brother had no idea just who he was dealing with. Before summer, our library allows students to take any 2 books of their choice, for the break. So, when my brother walked past MD to the librarian, and was stopped by MD, he was really confused. He had an Enid Blyton book and a copy of Backyard Science Experiments. Both my younger brother and I are really good at science-related topics, and he had been waiting for summer break to do some cool science experiments at home with me. MD, wait a minute, what book do you have there, B? B, a storybook and a backyard science book, ma'am. MD, what are you going to do with that backyard science book? Turning to the other library staff, I taught his father. No brains in there, you would have no idea what to do with this book. Leave it for someone who does. And with that, she snatched the book from his hands, and walked away, the library staff giving awkward laughs behind her. When he came looking for me, crying, I was furious. I was a really popular guy at school. I won quizzes and debates, and represented the school in national competitions. My friends and I literally had an entire showcase of trophies at school, with our names embossed on it, and most teachers loved us. Man, the vice principal of the school and our group were on first name basis. He chaperoned us on all the competitions we represented the school in. But when he told me what had happened, I was dumbfounded. I had no idea how to react, but for the moment, I went to the library and got another copy of the backyard science book to console my brother. But then, we were out for summer vacation, and I didn't think too much of it. Side note, in the summer, we attended a science summit, and my school friends and I won prizes for having the most efficient hydraulic gear-based pulley system, and the second fastest chemical fuel race boat. This was before I ever took a high school chemistry or physics course. This was announced in the school assembly the first day after summer break. When we came back for fall, I had a chem class with MD, the first day of school. This was also right after the assembly, where my group was given the award. So we go to the chem lab, and MD is on the lab instructor's desk setting up an experiment designed to liberate hydrochloric acid fumes in a gas flask. Some moments passed by, and we could see that some mistake had been done, and there was no reaction in the mixture. Turns out the zinc granules were impure and rusted. But MD somehow got the idea that turning on the Bunsen burner on full blast would help the experiment. After collecting the gas for about 3 minutes, which is 2.5 minutes too long, since hydrochloric acid fumes are toxic if inhaled, she is satisfied. She then pulls up the flask to show the class how we do experiments. Cherry on the icing is when she opens the flask and brings it uncomfortably close to the girl beside me. MD, does it smell pungent? The girl awkwardly smells it and jerks away. To someone who has no clue, that would be a plausible confirmation, but I knew that it was complete horseshit. I could see that the girl knew about pungent fumes and cringed away on reflex, and not because it was actually pungent. I don't know why I did it, but at that moment, I snorted loudly. MD instantly zooms in on me, walking toward me with her face contorting into an ugly expression. She goes, "Something funny you'd care to share with us?" I knew I messed up. But I was also angry. This person in front of me had bullied my younger brother, and my dad. I remembered that, and suddenly, all my verbal sensors were shut down. Me, you and I both know that she didn't smell anything pungent. That experiment you just did was a failure. MD, oh, you think you know more than me? Turning to class, he knows more than me. You know what, I'll step down. Why don't you teach the class, Professor Op? Me, oh absolutely. To the absolute shock of everyone watching, I walk up to the podium, and while maintaining eye contact with MD, first thing to remember class. Turn to experiment 1 of your lab textbook. Read the warnings. The gas is pungent, and poison. MD, how dare you? Has no one taught you manners? This is no roadside shack, and you would do well to remember that, else you're gonna have a couple broken bones. This was in a different language, but if you want the exact translations, it was, I'll break your limbs and feed them to you. She is absolutely furious. Grabs me by the hand and proceeds to drag me to the principal's office. On the way there, we cross the vice principal's office, and he sees MD dragging me away, and runs out. VP, what is going on here? Before I can say anything, MD starts ranting to him about how disrespectful and unacceptable my class behavior is, and is heaving by the end of her spiel. The VP gives me a searching look, and then responds with go back to class MD, I'll deal with him. We head back to his office, and he offers me a seat, and a glass of water. VP, what actually happened in class, Op? He asks with a sigh. I tell him exactly what happened. Once he hears my side of the story, he looks at me and incredulously asks me if I really went to the podium and started lecturing the class. I look up, and see the gobsmacked look on the VP's normally reserved face. Imagine someone who looks like a male Minerva McGonagall being completely shocked. I couldn't stop myself. It started with a snigger, which turned into full-blown laughter. I laughed till my stomach hurt and my eyes teared up. To my surprise, VP was also smiling widely at that. He shook his head, and that reserved expression was back. VP, I know that what happened there had you concerned for class safety, but that is no reason for such disruptive behavior. Aside from that, I'm personally going to investigate what happened in that class, and if MD is found to be intentionally forcing students to inhale harmful chemicals, she will be sacked immediately. Oh, and you're supposed to hand over a written apology to MD about this behavior. Now get moving. I sighed, and headed back to class, and I really thought that I had ended MD's career. Oh, how wrong I was. She changed the story so it looked like she had purposely done the experiment wrong and was about to reprimand that girl for inhaling what could have been a harmful chemical. MD pulled one on me and had me look like I was just an insolent child who thought that he knew everything by reading a chapter of the book. And here, I stopped myself. This event was me just going in head-on with the teacher who had been in the school for longer than 35 years. Next part being posted soon where Op gets his revenge.